Well, to say my guest today is a music legend would be an understatement. He is a Grammy-winning, Academy Award-winning composer, singer, songwriter, and actor. And oh, by the way, he just happens to be a Batman villain in his spare time. I've been waiting so long to say this. Ladies and gentlemen, a big welcome to the great Paul Williams. Mr. Williams, welcome to Comic Book Central.
Thank you, Joe. If I'd known it was going to be introduced like that, I would have been here a long time ago.
I could make your intro at least an hour because I grew up watching you. I know all about your career. I love everything about your career, but there's only so much time we can talk. We'll talk a little bit about that. Looking forward though to meeting up with you in Cincinnati. You're going to be at the Cincinnati Comic Expo here coming up.
It's I just started doing the Comic Cons and the like, and I have never ever charged anybody for an autograph or a photo in my life. And a gentleman walked up to me and he said, you're doing a lot of work in recovery and all. You can give all that money away. You can use it to help advance the causes and put people in treatment if you need to and the like, and music education for kids. So I have a foundation called the Sunlight of the Spirit at ASCAP, where I am gainfully employed, and it just worked out beautiful. And it's a chance to say thank you to the people that have been feeding my kids for 50 years.
That's the thing. I mean, well, I mentioned too, like you're the president of ASCAP, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so musicians' rights, I mean, that's always being questioned, and what especially with streaming services and things like that. So you've been keeping busy on that and just making sure everybody's taken care of. So it's nice to do that. You mentioned that you've started doing these things. What's been your Do you have any favorite moments recently of like going to fan conventions and things like that, or what are some of the stories that people are saying to you? Because now you're getting that feedback of
Oh,
all these years
yeah.
of fandom.
You know what? I don't feel like I have fans. I feel like I have friends, and it's interesting. I'm a construction brat. Grew up in the Midwest. Went to 9 schools by the time I was in the ninth grade. And so there's something about a dad and his kids coming in, or a granddad and his son or daughter and his grandkids, and saying, what, we love the Muppet movie, or a Phantom of the Paradise fan, or somebody if you dip into the South, it's like Smoking the Bandit. Little Linus turns me into a beetle in the South amongst a certain.
That's what I'm wondering. Like your table has to be, because usually you have the photos, right? And then it's like I'm wondering, like, because you're in the Star Trek world. I think an episode of Voyager.
Yeah.
I'm happy. So you mentioned Smokey and the Bandit, the Planet of the Apes franchise that comes in. So you got Apes fans because you played Virgil in one of the Planet of the Apes and showed up on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson as Virgil.
I did 48 Tonight Shows. I remember 6. Of course, a huge part of my life is, as I mentioned, is recovery. So
Right.
33 years sober, and it's the greatest
Congratulations.
I've ever been given. So if we get to keep the miracle by giving it away, so that's a huge part of my life.
Congratulations. And there's a part of the 70s I want to get to, and I want to talk to you about that in a minute. So hopefully you remember what I'm about to talk to you in a minute. We'll get to that in a second. You mentioned growing up, Omaha, Nebraska. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How long did you spend in Omaha, Nebraska? What age were you?
Not very much time. I think,
Okay.
a few years. Moved out to a little town called Bennington, which is just outside. Now it's probably part of Omaha, the way it's expanded. But then, just literally Rapid City, South Dakota, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Lucasville, Ohio, Kansas City, Wichita, all the places that my dad worked. And he worked on big projects. He built airports and hospitals and whatever for Peter Kiewit's Sons Company, a huge organization now. I was always the new kid in school. I was always the littlest guy in school. So it made for, I think and the perfect headwaters to doing something, where you have a chance to come face to face with people and maybe entertain them, maybe make them laugh, and maybe make them fall in love with the right lyric.
I was curious because sometimes like that's where the comedy comes from as a defense mechanism too. I know you mentioned the shortest person. So, or if somebody, I don't know if you were picked on in school or something, but like sometimes that's a defensive mechanism to, okay, I'm going to make the bully laugh. If I can do, is that Was that
No,
you?
it's an absolutely accurate observation. All and so, and I think for a lot of comedians as well, the comedy becomes a defensive mechanism. You make it, if somebody's laughing, you're not having to, to throw the first punch just to get out of their lives. So
Right.
um, yeah, and and it's funny because I was always excessive, with on stage. There was something about that. I mean, the short jokes, appeared often and early in the show, and I think that it also, makes people relax. Somebody goes, "Well, he's not uptight about anything, so relax." And I wasn't uptight because I was well medicated usually. So
Well,
in the early years, if you're going to talk about not so much the '70s, but addiction and the like is a progressive disease. So by the '80s. I misplaced a decade in the '80s.
wow.
You're alcoholic when you misplace a decade.
Yeah, that's what was it? I think the quote about the 60s. If you remember the 60s, you weren't in the
Yeah,
60s or
yeah,
something
you
like that.
didn't do
Yeah.
it right.
But you told some of the best short jokes. Like you always beat somebody to the punch. I know, like on almost every TV appearance, like you were always coming up with the best jokes itself. So it was almost like that disarming thing. Like you knew that. And plus you were a brilliant comedian. You are a brilliant comedian. So
But also, when you look, I mean, the great thing about my life is I started my career first as an actor, and I couldn't get arrested, and then started writing songs and all. But if you look at the period that I began writing and acting and all of it, it was the third act of some amazing, iconic careers and the like. Uh, so I was, all of a sudden I was in the middle of what was like old Hollywood for me, and so I'm living a dream and all, and then you dial into that something like Pat McCormick, who was the head writer on Johnny Carson's show, who became one of my best friends, and just repeating things that came up with Pat, would guarantee a huge laugh on stage. Pat, the story always told us about Pat and I not remembering when we met, but our first conscious memory was coming out of a bar. Like it was daylight. We'd been in there all night after it closed with the buddies that ran the bar and the like, and we walk out of there. And I don't think with the way I remember it is that he was very tall and threw a lot of shade, which was wonderful, because it was really bright out there. And he looked down at me. I don't think he'd ever seen me off a bar stool before. But he looked at me and he said, "You know what, little guy? You look like an aerial photograph of a human being." And I said, "I was stationed on you during the war, wasn't I?" He said, "That's right, you were." And he asked me to help him find his car. He said, "You know what? I have no idea where I parked my car, and you're going to have to help me find it." I said, "I can do that. What kind of a car is it?" And he said, "Oh, no, that would be cheating." It's just that kind of a mind,
great humor.
just provides great stories, you know, and 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 it was a joyful ride. It's still a joyful ride, a
Yeah.
little more responsible, but
Yeah.
but a
That's a good thing, and you're helping people too.
wonderful
But
ride.
for the listener, that he was big Enos in Smokey and the Bandit movies, and that line you said about an aerial, like that almost sounds like it could have been a line from like Burt
Yeah,
Reynolds said.
yeah.
I mean, it was
Well,
just what great chemistry.
Bert was actually on this Tonight Show, and I had met Bert a couple times, and all. And we said hi, and he looked over and just passed the camera, and saw me standing there with Pat McCormick, and he went, "I got an idea," and that idea was worth 3 movies. You're
Yeah, it
smoking
was.
1, 2, and even worse.
Would you say it was a joy? What was the quote? It was a joy to work on it. It was a chore to watch it, or
Yeah,
something like that.
vacation to make and a job to watch.
That's what it was. But the first one's a classic. The first one's an absolute classic. Favorite Paul Williams song that you've recorded, and favorite Paul Williams song that someone covered, or that someone else recorded.
Wow. Well, the my favorite Muppet is Gonzo, and
Mm,
and I would almost go with both of those, with a song called "I'm Gonna Go Back There Someday" from the Muppet movie. It's a wonderful scene where Gonzo breaks down in the desert, and He's a landlocked bird. I think we're all landlocked birds, basically spiritually. We're, if you have a spiritual life, I think we kind of feel that. And he's out in the desert and he looks at this guy and he sings a song about, I've never been there, but I know the way. I'm going to go back there someday. And it's just, it has one of my favorite lines I ever wrote in it. There's not a word yet for old friends who just met, which would probably apply to us, Joe. But it was a great to me. It was not only an important song in my life, but it's the story I always tell when I want somebody to know what it was like to work, for Jim Henson, because Kenny Asher and I wrote the song, and we went working on the Muppet movie, and went to Jim Henson and said, "Here's a song for Gonzo, and what do you think?" And he's, "Oh, it's a beautiful song." We went, well, I don't interesting. All the ways that he said no. I mean, he would say no in the most beautiful, soft, gentle way in the world. So we figured, well, there you go. That's not going to happen. And a couple of days later, he came back and he said, what if at the state fair scene, Gonzo buys a bunch of helium balloons for Camilla, his chicken girlfriend, and he buys too many, and he experiences flight. So it awakens that part of his soul that it is part of being a feathered animal or whatever, a bird, whatever. Anyway, it was just so that, and of course, Rainbow Connection is just, it's that little song that keeps on giving.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to mention the Gonzo song, because I thought if he starts to sing it, I'm going to tear up. And it's like, and yeah, it happened. So it's one of the greatest songs. Amazing. I got to ask you, I want to hit the 70s a little bit here. One of my all-time favorite shows ever in the history of television is Match Game.
Oh, I loved it.
Can you give me like your best Match Game story? I don't know if it involves Charles Nelson Riley or Brett, but like that era was just perfect, and you were the perfect guest on it. It was just what do you remember about those days? I know it's a loaded question.
It's interesting because I can't really go to a specific story, but I just there were two shows that I love to do. I mean, if I came in off the road, I'd been on the road for a month and I was exhausted, and somebody picked up, and I got a call from my manager. I said, I booked you to Match Game tomorrow. They want you, or to Hollywood Squares. I woke up. I mean, with Hollywood Squares, and I'm still friends with Peter Marshall, and he's doing great at, I think, 96. It's just, wow. He has a memory that is enviable to any of us. Obviously, Charles Nelson Riley, brought a certain approach. It was. I said one time to Harry Nelson, that I had just done the Match Game, and I said, to me, it's like the Round Table, of Dorothy Parker's legendary, Round Table days and all.
Oh, the Algonquin Round Table, yeah.
There you go. Like, how dare you refer to a game show as as something that could compete with Robert Benchley and Alexander Wolcott and
right.
bunch of names that I don't know who's going to remember out there. But there was a level of intellect that sparked the humor on that show that was wonderful. And Jack Klugman's wife, what was her name?
Brett Summers. Yeah, Brett Summers
was my
brilliant.
Probably, I mean, I had such a crush on her. I mean, it was like she was just, like I wanted her to just pick me up and set me in her lap.
And you'd keep her in tears. She would cry when you would talk, like laughing.
Oh, I just felt a really solid connection with everybody on that show and all. And, you'd be walking around the studio, NBC or CBS, wherever you're shooting this. And I mean, I remember going around a corner as Bill Bixby walked by, and we'd never met. And I was doing the like celebrity sweepstakes or Tonight Show or something, and he was doing something else. We walked by each other. And then both came back, and I said, I can't, but at the same time said, I can't walk by you. And like, we became like best friends, and we started a little production company called Loophole Productions. And for years, it was just, he was he was just a spectacular friend. But you know that kind of coming around the corner and coming to somebody that you've loved since courtship of Eddie's father's days, and
Yeah.
or to walk onto the set of the Hollywood Squares and go, wow, Vincent Price, you know.
Yeah.
You know, we had the same business manager, and I had never met him. And there's Vincent Price up there. So all of a sudden, I'm spending time with Vincent Price and everything. And I wound up, they were tearing down his beach house, and he said, "You should, you know, there's some really interesting things." I wound up with his mantle from his living room in my bedroom as just wonderful little
Oh,
things like
wow.
that that just decorated my life, if I can quote Debbie Boone, you
Yeah.
know.
Like where else are you going to meet somebody but on Hollywood Squares like that? Well, I had a chance, like over the years, I've had a chance to play some Match Game with some of the celebrities who've been on Match Game in the past, Adrienne Barbeau and different people like that. Do you mind if I play a quick round of Match Game with you?
Got it.
Okay. So this would be the first one is the Muppet blank. The Muppet blank. Any idea?
Let me
What
see, the
you
Muppet. Let me go up through
um
the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Well, the Muppet movie, the Muppet show.
That's it. That's it. You got it. You got it. Look, we already talked a little bit about that, but it's certainly to me, I think an orchestral soundtrack. I put Superman, John Williams Superman soundtrack for with lyrics and songs. I put this at the top of soundtracks of all time. Can you talk a little bit about how you got involved with Jim Henson? And I think you've described him as like one of the greatest men you've ever had a chance to work with.
Yeah. The elegance of kindness. The elegance of kindness is, and the complete trust in the people that he gathered around him to work with. The classic example is that he would, you know, everybody was creatively kind of on fire, you felt around there, and playing. It was work, and it was hard work. And what the Muppet performers do with their body, and it's amazing that they should all have a masseuse on call 24 hours a day, because they get into positions that are amazing. But the thing with the first thing I did with Jim is I did the Muppet Show, you know, and flew over to England, did it, and it just felt like, oh my God, you know, I always wanted to belong to a gang that had a treehouse, you know, like had a treehouse. You get up there with these guys, and yeah, this is my crew, this is my tribe, you
Oh,
know.
wasn't that? It was almost a treehouse with the old fashioned love song. I think you did old fashioned love song with the Muppets.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
don't remember what the setting was, but they made Muppet imitate Paul Williams so we could sing a 3-part harmony.
Yes,
Uh,
that's right.
but I did that show, and Jim got in touch with me almost immediately, and he said, "There's something I'm going to do for Canadian television and for HBO, called Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas." And I don't know if you know Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas or not, but it was a wonderful children's book. So we did it as a 1-hour HBO special. I wrote words and music and the underscoring and everything. And I think it was actually my audition for the Muppet movie. I think he wanted to see how we'd work together, you know, because he had done, you know, so many things, you know, with oh my God, Road, It's Not Easy Being Green. It'll come to me in the middle of the night. I'll sit up and say the name.
Yeah.
Um, but it worked out really beautifully. But when it came to the Muppet movie, this was their first feature film. It was a big deal, and I wanted that class. And so I had been writing with Kenny Asher. We'd written most of the songs for A Star Is Born. Um, and I said, I'd like to bring Kenny in to write these with me. He writes basically the music, I write lyrics. We kind of, we're a bit of a hybrid. We work with each other on all that and everything. But so we wrote the songs together, and then Kenny just had a baby girl. So he sat down to score the underscoring, and he went, I want to go home to my daughter. I haven't even spent any time. So he went off, and so I did the scoring for the picture. So it was kind of a reversal of roles.
Okay.
But it was the most absolutely amazing opportunity to score something that is like it's like basically it's a road picture. It's like, you know,
Mhm.
Hope Crosby Off on the Road to Love or whatever.
Right. Moving
But
right along.
yeah, moving right along. It was great fun, and
Yeah.
a lot of work. And yeah, and it's just it contained that one song. We wanted to be basically, we were inspired by When You Wish Upon a Star, from
Hmm.
Pinocchio, when Jiminy Cricket climbs up into the skylight and takes off his hat, looks at the night sky and sings When You Wish Upon a Star. If that doesn't touch you, there's something wrong with you. So that's what we tried to do.
I was so hoping you tap into that because it's such a perfect musical arc from Rainbow Connection, that start, and you can almost follow the rainbow all the way to the finale, the magic store.
Life's like a movie, write your own ending. Keep believing, keep pretending. Well, the interesting thing about the song, I digress, but when Kenny and I sat down to write it, we wrote ourselves into an awful corner. Why are there so many songs about rainbows, and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions. Rainbows have nothing to hide. Oh, Jesus, wait a minute. We just wrote ourselves into this corner. We just denied any magic to rainbows and just reduced it to a scientific fact. And but then we went, wait. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know the wrong. Wait and see. Someday we'll find it. The rainbow connect, the lovers, dreamers, and me. And what happens in that moment is interesting psychologically. Kermit steps away from the lectern and sits down in the audience and becomes a member of the audience, like someday we'll find it. And in that transition you lose all of the stuffiness of the professor teaching, and move right to that remarkable little ball of felt that is so brilliant that he's like the Jimmy Stewart of amphibians, I think.
That's perfect. Did you ever find yourself getting caught talking to one of the Muppets? Because the performers would always do that to the actors. They'd always try to,
Yeah.
in between takes, they'd always try to talk to them. And did you ever find yourself actually having a conversation?
If I'm talking to Frank Oz and Jim, and they have Kermit and Piggy with them, there are five of us in the conversation.
Yep.
And the thing is that, for example, Piggy will say things to me that Frank would never say. A level of rudeness, and
Brilliant.
a very healthy choice of language. It's just, oh my God, it was so much fun.
Yeah, they got away with a lot. Before we talk Batman, I've got to ask you about a different superhero, Superman. Were you, and I don't know if this is a mistake or what it is, but were you at one time tapped to write songs for Superman the movie?
I was,
Okay.
yeah, and the director, Richard Donner, wanted me to write something very specific. I mean, I wrote a lyric that I really loved. And it's interesting because I did something then that I wouldn't do now. I wrote something that I thought was perfect. And Richard Donner said, I want you to write, Can You Read My Mind? Can you read my mind? Do you know what I'm thinking of? And I went, oh, I don't like that. I think it's, and I don't remember what I said, to tell you the truth. But
Right.
what I had written is, just inside my soul, there's a love and a light that I never knew. Just inside my soul, there's a world that I saved for you. Like tonight, it is lusty and love swept, not a dream, but a promise that time kept. To a love beyond time that'll never end, never end. It'll come again when you hear me calling, which refers to when he turns back time to.
Yes.
And you know what? And the thing is that this is a collaborative experience, and he is the director. And when the director turned to me and said, "I don't love that. I love that. The Paul Williams sitting in front of you today, or the recreation of the zeros and ones that have offered this picture and voice." What I would have said was, "Oh, that's interesting. Let me go work. Let me see what I can do with that." Can you read
Okay.
my mind? There's a world that is hiding there. But he turned to a brilliant songwriter and a dear
Leslie
friend.
Bricusse.
And you're absolutely right, Leslie Bricusse.
I wanted to confirm that because I saw that article. I'm like, did Paul Williams get tapped to write that? That would have been unbelievable. But I mean, so many different soundtracks that you've done too
Well,
over the
but
years.
it's interesting because it's a classic example of this, as we age, we gather a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of perspective, and the ego sometimes is, you make your way through that veil
Yes.
of ego and get to that place where you go, you know what? This is the man I'm working for. Why don't you listen to what he's saying and try to do what he's requested? And and so there were two examples where I did not do that. And it's this, the song certainly didn't suffer, because when you have Leslie Bricusse and Hal David writing those lyrics, you're going to get the
Yeah,
best of the best anyway.
exactly.
No, it's interesting, because at this point in my life, I'm working on Pan's Labyrinth for the stage right now with Guillermo del Toro. And when he opens his mouth and says, "What if you did this?" I mean, it's like, I'll write it down right away.
See,
Right away.
2023, Paul Williams would have written Superman. So that's, now we know that that would have been it.
Yeah,
In the time we have left, can I play one more quick round of match game with you?
sure, bet.
All right.
You
So
bet.
we've got Oswald blank. Oswald blank. Anything ringing a bell?
Peppermill, Oswald Peppermill. Oh no.
That's close enough.
Yeah. Cobblepot.
Oh, the great Cobblepot. How did you get involved with Batman the Animated Series? Because I know I talked to Andrea Romano and they really wanted something different. It was maybe people that hadn't done a ton of voiceover work before. So it was almost like a who's who of Hollywood, I think, at that time.
I got a call. Would you come in? And I don't remember if I auditioned or not, but it was just a great gig, and Andrea was spectacular. And I love, incidentally, especially with doing voiceover work, and one of the great things about doing Batman, first of all, the look of the show. I mean, that, that dark, amazing, brilliant artwork that we got to support. Uh, but we did it in a room, gathered as a group, as an acting troupe, as opposed to going in and doing our lines. And one of the things that I loved is I love line readings. I go, show Andrea, show me. It's like, and it's, I mean, I may do it myself. I may come up from the top of my head to "you flying rodent," but sometimes it's like you're talking about in the script, where I want to know exactly where we're coming out of something, where all of a sudden am I going to beg somebody with saying, you're going to regret this, you're going to regret this, or am I going to be talking about, or is it a threat? You're going to regret this, you flying rodent, then you sit there and you look at the people surrounding you, and it's from Richard Mall to, you know to Luke,
Mark Hamill, Kevin Conroy, the late great Kevin Conroy, the late great Arlene Sorkin. We just lost her. I mean, it's just such a, and you guys all got to work together. You were all
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that was the great fun of it, and you don't have to dress for the occasion. It's great.
That's true. Most people say they just like to show up wearing their, whatever they're wearing that day.
Exactly. It was, yeah, it was wonderful. And again, I just have to just go back and lay it all at the feet of Andrea, because, Ms. Romano was a brilliant director, and yeah, and I'd been doing, some I'd done, I don't know where exactly it falls in the time frame and all, but the Fish Police or whatever, and the
Mhm.
My Little Pony and stuff that I've
Phantom
done.
2040. I know you did a lot of
Yeah,
Phantom
exactly.
2040.
Yeah, I've even played the voice of a hydrogen bomb, and what was it? Anyway, but
Brainiac. You got to play Brainiac. But you brought Brainiac to life in the world of Superman too.
oh yeah.
I think with Penguin though, would it have been easy? Like, I know you relied on Andrea Romano, but like, you didn't look at any like the Burgess Meredith stuff and that, like they didn't want,
Oh, I knew
that
it
would have been
all.
too easy.
I'd seen all of them, and it's like, I mean, it's such an amazing character. But look where they went with the story, and
Right.
that made, where you look at the background. The Penguin was a broken, injured character. He was a broken bird, and at the headwaters of anger is usually fear, or sadness, whatever. Was a complicated character. It was great to have a shot at playing at providing that voice.
It's an amazing job, and we were so grateful that you brought it to life. Let's see, paulwilliamsofficial.com. That's the website, right? So for anything about Paul Williams, that's where we go.
You know what? Yeah, that's where you go and everything. And I'm having a really good time. I've been writing with a group called Portugal the Man and loving those guys. And we're working on a bunch of things together. And of course, Pan's Labyrinth that I'm really excited about. And the fact is that as you mentioned earlier, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers is a member owned and operated organization that licenses the music of everybody from Paul McCartney to Beyonce to Paul
To Paul
Williams.
Williams. That's right.
Uh, and it's just amazing to go to Washington and keep fighting for songwriters who deserve to be properly compensated for the beautiful work they do, and the publishers that have given us a life by making sure our stuff gets out there, and the great composers, that we represent as well.
Take care of them as well. So Cincinnati Comic Expo, that's what's coming up next for you, September 22nd through 24th. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person there. We're going to have some fun time in Cincinnati. Mr. Williams, as I mentioned, this has been a complete honor. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while. You wrote the soundtrack to my life, to many other people's lives. So thank you for that. Thank you for all you do to help everybody. You give back so much. We thank you for that, and we thank you for joining me on Comic Book Central today.
Joe, it's as long as I'm after this wonderful occasion, it's got to be Paul from now on out. Mr. Williams was my dad, but thank you for the respect and the advocacy, and I look forward to seeing everybody, especially you, at the Cincinnati Comic-Con.
Oh, that's going to be amazing. So looking forward to seeing you there. I'll bring my Batman. I'll bring my Muppet movie soundtrack with me.
Got it.
Take care,
Done.
my friend.
You as
All
well.
right. Bye.